Paul has a lot to say about concepts of love, forgiveness, retaliation. So I'm going to read verse 17, never pay back evil with more evil. Verse 18, do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Romans 12:20 is quoting Proverbs 25 here. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads, which is an interesting turn of phrase that's kind of
Quite a
open to
loaded sentence.
interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very loaded implications there. It's interesting. And then finally, verse 21, don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. So, like the list we were just talking about, this value of choosing love over hate, choosing forgiveness, choosing nonviolence, even is something that I really resonate with. I think that's like a beautiful value that Christianity has and is sadly like doesn't seem to be embraced very widely. But it's something I really believe in. I really believe like that, if there is any way that we can get like peace on earth, this is how we have to get there, by choosing love over hate. And of course, I know that that's like hopelessly naive and it's not pragmatically attainable in the real world. When you can only talk this way for so long before someone just calls you like a dirty hippie who hasn't like seen enough, experienced enough of the hard side of life. So I should acknowledge I'm speaking from a place of privilege, right? I live a very comfortable middle class life. I'm not like living in a war torn country right now. But I'll just say, I wanted to ask you about this concept of nonviolence because I know it's something you're very passionate about as well, Jeremy. And in an earlier episode, you had mentioned if I didn't believe in Jesus, I would not believe in nonviolence anymore. So, I've been thinking about that for the past several weeks of, I agree Jesus very clearly taught nonviolence, but there's also non-Christians who are exemplars of nonviolence. Gandhi is probably the most famous example. And there's also a lot of Christians who, in my view, seem to be very pro-violence. Like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of people who are very nationalistic, militaristic, a real celebration of gun culture within Christianity. So, yeah, why do you need Jesus to be nonviolent? That's my question for you.
Well, I think why we all need Jesus to be nonviolent is because the world is violent.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with you. Probably nothing I believe gets more mocked and made fun of than this. And I mostly get made fun of it by Christians who look at me like, yeah, how cute for you that you think that this could be possible, or, that the world will work like this. To clarify, I said, because I definitely piqued your interest with that line that I said the other day, because it's brought up numerous times. I'm not saying if I didn't believe in Jesus, I would go back to violence now. What I'm saying is, and this is the point I was trying to make, I never would have got to a nonviolent point of view outside of Jesus. Like, it was Jesus that got me there. That's how I changed my mind on the thing. So it wasn't because I read something Gandhi wrote and it was so moving to me, although I'm sure that could have happened. It was because I studied Jesus. And in particular, I think about like Matthew 5, and I want to read verses 43 through 48, because this is what Jesus teaches that I think literally is the most perhaps ignored thing that Jesus taught, but also the most life-changing if Christians were to take this literally. Matthew 5:43 says, "You have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven." Basically, this is how our family operates. "For he gives his sunlight, God, to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike." Meaning, karma is not real. There's no thing like that. "If you only love those who love you, what reward is there for that? Even corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else? Even pagans do that. But you are to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." Basically, you are to be like your dad when it comes to this. You should share the family values of this. This is how our family operates. I would just tell you, I'm so drawn to this. I'm so enamored with this. this is like literally life altering, history changing type stuff. And the
Mm-hmm.
sad reality, which you and I would quickly agree with, is that most Christians don't take this literally. And you would not conclude this would be inherently something Jesus taught if you watched many Christians today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which absolutely is to the utter failure of the collective church that we have disregarded Jesus' words here. But I would just say this is what makes Jesus, one of the things that makes Jesus so fascinating to me and so compelling to me and just draws me in of like, I don't see this anywhere else. Like, this is incredible how far Jesus takes this. And I remember, I think it was my last trip. I've been to Israel, I think 4 different times, something like that. And I remember my last one, we were in this meeting with a rabbi and listening to this rabbi talk. And, you know, it's just, we weren't like trying to debate anything. It was just like understand, you know, the Jewish point of view better than I did. And so
Mm-hmm.
listening to this rabbi explain things and, you know, we're just kind of asking questions. And I remember getting the sense as he was talking about like the future of Israel and all this, that he had no obligation that he had to love his enemies. Like that was not a thing this rabbi believed. And it may sound dumb, but it was one of those like epiphanies for me. I was like, if all you go off of is the Old Testament, that's not a clear teaching, right? And you could
Oh
even
yeah.
say it's justified the opposite way, right? If
Right.
you
Right.
just use the Old Testament. It's really Jesus that is the game changer on this. And if you don't choose Jesus, right, which modern day Jews would say, no, that's not the Messiah, then you have no reason to say necessarily we're going to love our enemies, because why? Like, why would we believe that, you know? And this is one of the ones I just go, this has got to be one of the most unique things about Christianity. And the saddest reality to me is that Christians are not known for this. And in fact, you referenced Gandhi. Gandhi once had this famous quote: the
Mm-hmm.
only people on earth who do not see Christ and his teachings as nonviolent are Christians.
Yeah.
And that's like the
Yeah.
most damnable statement about Christians. And it was Gandhi who's like, look, can you guys read Matthew 5? Like, you're the only ones who walk away and are convinced God wants you to have more guns. And somehow this has become all a part of the Christian culture today, you know, in America. And I was at, I don't think what it was like, some new coffee company. And they're like, yeah, it's going to be amazing. It's, you know, guns, God, and coffee, you know, in no particular order. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like the fact that that just seems like such a normal guns, God, and coffee. Like I would go, one of those is inherently out of place, right? Like, and it's not the coffee or God. But it was said to me like they knew I was a Christian. Like, of course, you're going to automatically resonate with this idea because you're a Christian. Like, you must love guns. And I just hate that part of Christianity. Like, I hate that I get associated with, oh, you're a Christian? Like, of course, then you love guns like we love guns. It's like, no, I don't. Now, here's
Mm-hmm.
the weird part is I was raised with a love of guns, and I own guns, and I've shared that story, you know, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was studying this passage where, you know, someone just asked me to consider, like, what does it really mean to love your enemies? And can you love an enemy if you're willing to put a bullet in them? And it's like, no. If I'm willing to take your life, I'm not, I'm literally living contrary to that. And so, you know, I agree with you. I live in a very sheltered environment, so it's easy for me to say this. But, you know, I got rid of my guns so that in the event that I was threatened and scared, I wouldn't even have them available to use anymore. Because I suspect in a moment of weakness, I would want to. And so all I know
Mm-hmm.
how to do is say, I believe this is something better. And I want that to be what I would choose in that moment. And I think this is a game changer. And the reality, the reason it's a game changer is because we live in a very violent world that thinks, you know, Pax Romana is the idea of Roman peace. Rome only brought peace because Rome had a bigger army. And so
Mm-hmm.
that peace only worked as long as Rome's army was in control. And this is how most Christians think. We have peace today through America. Well, it's Pax Romana. It's only peace as long as our military is the strongest. It's not real peace, because all we're trying to say is we'll beat violence with bigger violence and more violence. And this is what Jesus said, like that escalates violence. It doesn't, you don't, this is Romans 12 even, like we're not fighting evil with evil. We're fighting evil with good. There's something different. And so this is where I would say, Christians, this is our chance to change the way we think. Let's try to literally take Jesus seriously in Matthew 5 here and go, hey, I think this is going to make sense. And this will play a ton into Romans 13 next week. So I'm very passionate about this. If you can figure this out, I think we've missed it on this one.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I'm passionate about it too. Totally agree. Like when the idea of like do not repay evil with evil, it makes me think of the debate we have around mass shootings. In this country, we have a huge
Yep.
problem with the gun culture in this country, and we have so many people who are making the argument saying the only solution to a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And then there's other people who are making the argument that I think the best thing we can do is have as little guns as possible. And most of those people, from what I've seen anecdotally, are not the Christians. So I guess that's just something that bothered me. Like again, I 100% agree with you on the philosophy of turn the other cheek, love your enemies. This is the way we achieve peace. And yeah, I'm deeply disappointed in the fruit that I see within Christian culture. Like they say, like you will know a tree by its fruits. I had this huge crisis about the evangelical culture's embrace of Trump in 2016. I was surprised by it. It didn't make any sense to me. I thought like this character seems so different from the character of Jesus. Why are people into that? And then eventually I got to the point where I was like, but those people who love Trump are way more Jesus-y than me. They've got Jesus on their bathroom wall. They've got Bible verses all over their home. They pray more than me. They read the Bible more than me. So, who am I to say that this is the way of Jesus and the moral majority is not? And I think that also translates to the gun culture that I see.
Well, and again, this goes back to, okay, so let's go to Romans 12 too. Let
Mm-hmm.
God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on to say, bless those who persecute. This is all chapter 12, not in Matthew 5 anymore. This is all just our chapter today.
Yeah, it's fair game. Yeah.
Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do all you can to live in peace with everyone. Never take revenge. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. And then don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. Like this is like Paul's literally now giving you a chance. Hey, change the way you think. Oh, now I'm going to show you how to do that. Like we're going to love our enemies. That's how we're going to do it. And I think most Christians read this are like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to put Bible verses on my wall instead. It's like, no. Like Paul's literally giving you a way to change what you think. And you might go, well, what was Paul talking about? In verse 2, when he says, change the way I think about what? I don't know. Let's go on to see what he talks about right after that. You know what I mean? This is it.
But the conservative gun nuts could just preach the same thing to us, right? They could say, we need to change the way we think and buy more guns.
But I would say, show me that.
It works both
show
ways.
me that in the text.
Yeah, well, Old Testament at least, for sure. Okay,
so we're out of Romans now. This is a Romans podcast. Come on. You can't do that.
Another thing I wanted to just acknowledge, because this is something that I've held to for many years, and the two biggest kind of like recent historical moments that have really given me pause were when the US pulled out of Afghanistan and the current war in Ukraine that we're seeing right now. To take like Ukraine specifically, this is a case where people are just living, they go from just living their lives to being violently oppressed by a neighboring force. And this is where the whole nonviolence philosophy really challenges me, because who am I to say these people should just die in their home or just flee? Like, who am I to say they can't retaliate and defend their homeland? Yeah, I don't know. And I wonder if you would say like that's where Christianity has some kind of edge, because it promises people if they behave nonviolently, then they'll be rewarded in the afterlife or something like that. because that's something that is the problem with nonviolence, is like it only really works if everyone agrees to it at the same time, and it seems like that's not going to
Well,
happen anytime soon.
here's the way I would say it. There is no guaranteed formula on any end of the spectrum. Okay, so here's an argument I get often. Oh, so someone breaks into your house, you've gotten rid of your guns, way to go. There's now no way you can defend your family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's an argument I get a lot. To which I would say, no, you're assuming the only way I can defend my family is by trying to kill an intruder. I could try to stop them without killing them, right? I could try to use my words. I could invite the Holy Spirit to creatively come up with some other solution. Now, there's no guarantee. I absolutely agree with that. Like, there's no guarantee
Mm-hmm.
I may lose. Absolutely. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the kicker that we don't often point out. Let's say you're the guy that's got 20 guns and you're like, never going to happen to me. Okay. What if there are more intruders than there are of you and they outshoot you? The end result is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same. So you can't guarantee in that situation that you would for sure have the upper hand and you would shoot better than they could shoot. And they were, you couldn't guarantee that either. And so we have to acknowledge we live in a world where you cannot guarantee the outcome either way. Even if you say, I'm committed to violence, unless you always have the upper hand, which historically, no one always has the upper hand, right? That changes,
Mm-hmm.
that ebbs and flows. You can't guarantee it. And so I think what we're acknowledging on a deeper level, this is a massive insecurity we have as humans, that I would be vulnerable, my loved ones would be vulnerable, and there's something inside of us like I don't ever want to feel that kind of vulnerability. And the problem with it is there's no way you can escape it. There's none. Like, you could buy all the guns you want. You could have a stockade in your house. You cannot escape the fact that there could be something that could go wrong, that you wouldn't be able to, rise to the challenge. And, take anything you want. Okay, so you versus a SWAT team comes in. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, go
Mm-hmm.
any extreme and the outcome could be the same. You're betting on the fact that you think you could disarm someone or you could, you could overpower them. And maybe you
Right.
could. But I'm just saying, I think Jesus is offering us something different. And it doesn't mean it's going to work every time. And I think anyone committed to nonviolence has to acknowledge that. Like, I don't believe this because I think it's for sure going to win. It might not win. I just believe this is the only thing that's going to make the world better. And, Christians have been willing to die all throughout history. And I think one of the most, human things we could do is to acknowledge the vulnerability that exists and be real about it rather than pretending that we can have big enough guns to make it go away.
Again, I am in violent agreement with you on all of that, if you'll pardon the pun. Yeah, yes, violence only begets more violence. And I mean, we even see this with the presence of nuclear weapons, right? The fact that we're in this perpetual standoff because we have enough firepower to just wipe out the entire planet at any time, and you would think that would be enough to just say, like, okay, we tried violence, no more. This is not the right way to solve the world's problems. And then somehow humanity persisted and has found creative ways to perpetuate violent on the ground wars without resorting to nukes so that the fighting can continue.
Right.
Okay, so just one more thing I wanted to ask you. Have you studied Jainism or Jainism?
No.
Are you familiar with this religion? It's kind of a offshoot of Hinduism, predates Christianity by several thousand years. It's like the ultimate non-violent religion, I would say, in the sense that its its participants, like, are their number one tenet is commit no violence to any other living thing. So that obviously not hurting or killing other humans, but to the extent that, of course, they're vegetarian, they don't eat meat, but they also wear a cloth over their faces so that they don't accidentally swallow any bugs. The particularly pious people will sweep the ground in front of them so they don't step on bugs or anything. So in today's culture, it's a pretty niche kind of corner of, it's kind of an offshoot of Hinduism and Buddhism because they believe in reincarnation and all that. But anyway, just that to say, like, these types of things make me think that perhaps there are other like philosophies out there. Like Jesus was not the first one to come up with this idea that we need to be nonviolent.
Okay. I didn't
Okay,
say he was the first one.
okay. Is that? But okay, I guess like that. Does that give you pause at all? Because I mean, that combined with the fact that we have so many violent Christians in the world, that doesn't give you pause or make you question like what's going on here.
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it to you. No, and
Mm-hmm.
I think Jesus is the most compelling version of it. I think Gandhi is also very compelling. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
but Jesus taught it, modeled it, died for us, and I think Jesus also happened to be God. So yeah, I, whatever religion, I don't know how you say it, whatever religion you said, yeah, I like that they're nonviolent. I don't want to go study them and go sweep bugs. Like that. I would say, okay, maybe I like the spirit behind it, but that seems rather intense.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is talking about how we treat people, and I think modeled it and sacrificed for people rather than retaliate, and that to me is really compelling.
It's compelling to me too. I guess it's maddening that because Jesus is so popular. You know what I mean? Like everybody loves Jesus, even non Christians love Jesus. But
Well, but
and
there's a bazillion versions of Jesus, right?
yeah,
There's the Hobby Lobby version that we love to talk about. There's that's the
yeah,
problem. Like there's not many Matthew 5:43 versions of Jesus that are popular.
mm-hmm,
And that's where I'm going. I think we should take this part literal. Like,
mm-hmm.
and I'm in a minority. I acknowledge, like, to the shame of Christianity, I'm in a minority there because most Christians would not agree with that.
One other thing, as I was thinking about the fact that the call for nonviolence is potentially a call for self-sacrifice. It brought me all the way back to verse 1 of Romans 12 of presenting your bodies as living sacrifices. Just another thought when I was thinking about what are the implications of nonviolent resistance, whether for the sake of Christianity and you're like sacrificing yourself as a missionary or something, or some other political movement where you're committed to trying to get results without resorting to violence. So again, just to say something positive about it, I think Romans 12 has a lot of really great philosophy, a lot of really great ideas here. I guess I would argue they're not completely unique, but I think the fact that so many people love Jesus is is a compelling reason why we should embrace this philosophy and see if we can get more people on board. But I don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, if someone does love Jesus and you can point them here, then I'm hopeful that you go, hey, let me tell you what he taught, like, and then you see him model it, like he lived it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm hopeful. And again, I changed my mind on this, so I know what it feels like to be a pro-violent Christian and think that that's the way the world works, and then to realize, yeah, that's not actually what Jesus was talking about. And so I've changed my mind, and I try to leave space for others wherever they're at. And again, most of my friends are not where I'm at, and we can lovingly joke about. They'll say things like, "Well, I'm not where you are with the gun thing," and always preface it with that. And it's like, yeah, it's not a condition of being my friend, but I'm still going to try to point you to this beautiful picture of Jesus that I see, and I think is a better way to live our lives, and I think it would make the world better.
I agree with you, Jeremy. I think that's the best way we have to make the world a better place.